as executive director of E2Tech. A great thing that I do is introductory remarks, which allow people to filter in without feeling like they're missing anything. And you know us, we're your connectors and conveners, and people joke I'm networker in chief. If I can help you get connected to a resource, I want to do that. Remember that our mission is to grow Maine's clean tech economy. We're going to be doing that today, I think, with Melissa Winne's remarks. And but our events, we're proud of this, always free for public officials. You have that legislature.maine.gov, maine.gov email, students, municipal officials, city councilors, and so forth. Join us, and your paid membership makes that possible. So we thank you for doing that. We've been great student membership. I don't know how we somehow put the Bitcoin logo next to that. Maybe students are all in Bitcoin too, and they should be paying for their memberships. But use us in social media too, if you would. I try to keep things current. E2Tech Maine on most of those platforms. We're proud of our work, and in our membership base is really committed to growing the diversity of the clean tech workforce, and we're making tons of great progress there. We've been doing some great work. Francis, can I pick on you? Are you here? All of your work with our energy policy updates and news. This used to be boring over here, this section of the website. Now it's exciting. Hey, Francis, how are you doing? Hit that mute button for me, Francis. We've been putting, yes. There you go. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm well. How are you?
Good. So a bunch of activity this week, I can imagine that you're tracking.
Yeah. Today's a very busy day.
I know everybody, including our speaker today, Melissa Winne, is very involved with tracking the EUT committee. E2Tech doesn't lobby or advocate, but we do track. And so for members, go into that for members, and we get an update from Francis every week, and I post it there on Monday or Tuesday, and there's going to be some good stuff in there this week. We're blessed to have support from the Horizon Foundation for all of our events all year long this year. Thank you to everybody there at Horizon. We're also very pleased to be working with the Maine Technology Institute, and specifically reviving the Environmental and Energy Tech Board. We'll learn today that tech board, which is one of 7 targeted technologies that the state of Maine has identified to grow, fund, and support at MTI over the last 22 years. That one is just not getting the quote unquote deal flow, and E2Tech is here to change that. Help us do it. Thanks to Burns and Mac, Bernstein Sure, Power Market, SMRT, these wonderful members. Power Market just renewed, they do community solar. And we couldn't do this without this crew here. Please patronize these businesses that support us. If you'd like connections at any of them, let me know, and we will make that happen, including these annual sponsors. You get a break in your day, check out TRC and VHB and mainbiz.biz. There's always good stuff there. We've got 2 really interesting events coming up. Forever Chemicals is the lingo, right? PFAS. This is on April 13th. And then another one of these E2Tech Connects coming up on May 4th. May the 4th be with you. And we're going to learn about nature-like fishways. There's 2 of these in the state. There's a lot of tech behind these things, and they work for more fish than just salmon. So we're going to hear from Brookfield about how that works. And then we got a couple. Earth Day is a month from yesterday, April 22nd, and that Earth Day week, we could not get David Reed Miller, previously of the Biden administration, now of GMRI, on actual Earth Day. As you can imagine, he's busy that day, but that Earth Week, we're going to hear from him tentatively, I think, to be confirmed soon, of the efforts at GMRI. And then this is a full forum that I know Nick at Spring Creek Farm is interested in, and others probably here. Beekeeping, pollinators in the energy business. That one is World Bee Day. I bet you didn't know there was a World Bee Day. I didn't, on May 20th. So we have a board member, Sarah Watts Martin from Tetra Tech, managing partner over there, who also keeps bees, and she's putting that forum together. If this is your thing, or if dual use solar is your thing, now's the time to get involved with this forum. We want these E2Tech Connect things to be collaborative. We are recording it. but it's meant to be kind of informal. Melissa has asked that you ask questions about data during the presentation and about big picture after the presentation, but it is an attempt at simulating the networking we used to be able to do in the hallways after or before an E2Tech event. So please don't be bashful about getting involved. If you feel up to it, stay on screen, or just be part of it. Reach out to us if you have any issues. And there's my cup of coffee that I'm about to have as I hand things over to Melissa Winne, that we're so pleased to have Melissa speaking to us today. And you got a ton of good stuff to tell us about. Thanks, Melissa. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks so much, Marty and Adelaide and E2Tech for inviting me here today. I love the idea of the informal conversations, but with slides. It'd be nice to have during conversations when we're back in person.
Right.
But I am the energy policy analyst with the Governor's Energy Office. I'm going to share my screen.
If I let you, which I think I managed to remember to do.
All right, how's that?
Very good.
Great. Set this up. All right, so I'm here today to talk about a report that the Governor's Energy Office and the Governor's Office of Policy, Innovation, and the Future released in November of last year. It's called Strengthening Maine's Clean Energy Economy. And for some context of kind of where this report came from, it is a required component of the Maine Climate Council's Climate Action Plan. So it is both kind of a supplemental report to the Climate Action Plan, and then the Maine Climate Council did adopt some strategies from the report into the Climate Action Plan itself. And for those of you who may not be familiar with the Climate Council, it was established in 2019 to provide some guidance and recommendations for how the state should meet its greenhouse gas reduction targets. So that's 40% below 1990 levels by 2030 and 80% by 2050. And as I mentioned, a component of this is focused on kind of building the clean energy economy and those economic and workforce state. And so the recommendation within the Climate Action Plan is Strategy D. So if you're looking through the report, you can find it there. And this is, again, around growing the clean energy economy and really pulls on the strategies proposed in the report that I will talk in more detail about. I'm going to go through these slides pretty quickly. I will send the slide deck to Marty to share, but I wanted to highlight some of the policies and programs that are really driving growth in the clean energy sector overall in the state. So we have here beneficial electrification of heating and transportation. So we are the most heating oil dependent state in the country. And then in terms of in-state emissions, transportation emissions are over half of our emissions. And so decarbonizing these two sectors with the inclusion of beneficial electrification in addition to low carbon fuel sources is going to be a key component of meeting the greenhouse gas reduction goals. So I highlight here a few programs related to that. I also wanted to note the renewable portfolio standards. So legislation in 2019 increased the state's RPS to 80%, increased from 40%. That's by 2030, and established a goal of 100% by 2050. You can see in this little chart here on the right that we do have one of the most ambitious RPS in the region. And a component of the legislation that increased that included a procurement for 14% of Maine's electric load, and that did require 30% consideration to economic benefits. So you can look at some of the outcome from the first round of that, and the second round bids were due last week. So we'll be hearing about that second round of procurement as well. And there is a thermal renewable energy credit as a part of that as well. Looking at solar, you can see here that Maine has lagged behind in solar development compared to New England, but there's been significant growth in interest in solar development in the state, and projects working to be developed. If you're following the legislature, you know this is a key topic right now around kind of what the future of the DG and net energy billing programs look like. But all to say that, you know, there's definitely growth projected for the region as a whole and in Maine specifically. And this is looking primarily at the smaller scale here, but there are larger scale projects that are participating in the RPS, for example, that I mentioned before. And then finally, just on offshore wind, we do have a Maine offshore wind initiative that component of that is informing some of our regional collaborative work in terms of the BOEM Gulf of Maine Intergovernmental Task Force. We also received EDA funding in October for a Maine's floating offshore wind roadmap. There's a lot of information on our website about the various initiatives related to offshore wind, but another significant economic and workforce development opportunity as this sector grows as well. All to say that, you know, these various programs and policy initiatives are really pushing the growth of the clean energy sector in the state. And so, you know, ensuring that we're prepared to take full advantage and have the adequate workforce that's going to be needed is key. And that's what I'll talk more about today. So the clean energy economy overall is pretty broad. It includes a range of sectors, including clean energy and energy efficiency. And an evaluation even in 2014 showed that of Maine's technology-related drivers, clean energy was particularly well positioned for growth within Maine and for Maine to become a regional leader in the sector. I think this group's probably pretty well aware of the various opportunities of really growing this sector in the state. You know, participation in the regional and even global energy markets, opportunities for workforce development, opportunities through the various supply chains related to clean energy, opportunities for community benefits and public health benefits as we reduce our emissions. So when the Climate Action Plan was released in December 2020, Governor Mills also established a goal of 30,000 clean energy jobs by 2030. And this is about a doubling of Maine's current clean energy jobs. And so keeping that in mind as we look at the data and the strategies proposed in the plan as we work towards this newly established jobs goal. Really exciting. So now I'll get a little bit into the data so we all have an understanding of where kind of national trends are and what current energy job numbers are in the state. So nationally, there's 3.4 million Americans working in clean energy occupations. And just for reference, it's more than real estate, banking, or agriculture, and it's 3 times the number of existing fossil fuel jobs. Nationally and in Maine, energy efficiency really leads that employment, and we're seeing growth happening quickly. So between 2015 and 2019, the clean energy sector was adding jobs about 70% faster than other economic sectors. And the data that I'm referring to throughout the report is looking primarily at 2019. So I want to recognize here that that is pre-pandemic, and there are impacts that we will be seeing moving forward. So in December, there was a report starting to look at that, and they had monthly reports prior to that. December, I believe, is the latest. So at that time, there were still 430,000 workers out of work. It's about 12% from the beginning of the year. We are seeing, initially job loss and then some slight job recovery throughout last year, and that's really following general economic trends in a number of sectors. And there is precedent, for the clean energy sector to recover after economic challenges. So between the growth and support in the policies, and then just, recognizing that it has recovered previously, I think there's a lot of opportunity for clean energy to play a part in economic recovery for the state. So looking at a bit more detail of what these jobs are, there is a report that was done by E2, ACOR, CELI, and BW Research called Clean Jobs, Better Jobs. And it's really one of the first comprehensive analysis analyses of wages and benefits across clean energy sector, that found that compensation tends to exceed national wages and are more comparatively financially equitable. There can be lower educational requirements, though there does tend to be a need for scientific knowledge and technical skills. They found that about half of clean energy workers attain only a high school diploma, but they earn higher wages than those with similar education levels in other industries. I do just need to note that, work still needs to be done on diversity and equitable opportunities here. Less than 20% of clean energy production and energy efficiency workers are women, for example. In Maine specifically, you can see here energy employment for 2018 and 2019, and there was growth in each of these subsectors. For the purposes of our report, we really focused on these four: so electric power generation, fuels, transmission, distribution, and storage, and energy efficiency. I think we'll see some clean energy jobs in the motor vehicles subsector as well, but just the way the data was presented, it was challenging to kind of differentiate clean energy jobs compared to general kind of energy sector jobs. So we focused on these four. Prior to the pandemic, there was about 18,000 people employed in the overall energy sector, and about 14,000 of those fall within clean energy. So here we have the electric power generation sector specifically, and you can see that wind has the highest employment, about 1,300 jobs, and that's followed by solar. And then comparatively, natural gas, coal, oil, and other fossil fuel, again, electric generation, is about 319 jobs combined. And the data here is just direct jobs. This is not indirect jobs or induced jobs, those created throughout the economy from this growth. This is just direct. And you can see for solar in particular, they do show kind of how many people spend the majority of time in solar versus less than 50% of their time solar specific. And you can see here the majority spend the majority of their time in solar. Then looking broadly at fuels, you can see that the majority here, so 1,800 about, are employed in oil and other petroleum. That's followed by woody biomass. And I think this ties into strategies recommended later of making sure that we're considering just transition principles as we're looking at economic and workforce opportunities here, and recognizing any potential implications of moving to a clean energy future that may be had by other sectors in the energy sector more broadly.
Yeah, woody biomass. He's an E2Tech member. Just kidding. So Nick asked a question about Melissa, about the percent of women or the lack of diversity.
Sure, I don't see the chat up, if you don't mind letting me know.
I think it was 20% or something like that.
Yeah, it's fewer than 20% of, and it's clean energy production and energy efficiency workers are women.
Got to work on that.
So just setting some national context again here, kind of how does Maine compare? So this is showing the share of statewide employment as of the end of 2019. And the darker colors are a higher percentage of clean energy workers compared to overall employment. Maine's not leading. However, if you look at this data in a per capita basis, the top 5 spots are Northeast states. We have Vermont, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, Maryland, and Delaware. And as I mentioned before, we've got new programs that are being implemented and seeing growth there. And I think seeing the success of building this workforce in other similar states, in a similar region, supports that there's significant expected growth here. And potential lessons to learn too, as we look at how other states are advancing their clean energy workforce. So we understand that there's potential for growth. We recognize that means that there will be workforce needs to meet that. And so we looked at some data from some of the sources listed here, and the 2020 US EER, it's the US Energy and Employment Report. Just to note, that report came out around this time last year, so I expect an updated report shortly. But that did include a national survey for Maine. That included Maine, that showed that Maine companies were projecting about a 7% increase in electric power generation jobs in 2020, 400 new energy efficiency jobs. Again, this was pre-pandemic, but I think it supports the potential for growth here. But to get a better understanding of where energy companies were in the state, the Energy Office and GoPIF did conduct a survey. And I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the key findings from that now. And before I do, I just want to note that this was not a scientific survey. It's not statistically valid. It was sent out, and people that were willing to take it were able to take it. It really shows more of the qualitative overarching themes. I assume some people on this call may have taken it, in which case, thank you. And I'd be interested in hearing more of your thoughts on that and your responses if you'd like to share. So we had about 118 responses. You can see here that about 36% fell within the renewable energy category, 26 energy efficiency. The other listed here was primarily relevant nonprofits and educational institutions, and we had a handful from kind of the traditional fuels, T&D and storage, and transportation alternative fuels. When we asked, whether the transition to a clean energy economy, what kind of impact that would have, 81% of the respondents indicated a positive impact. So it just gives a better understanding of kind of who took the survey and what responses we're looking at. So we asked about, whether these companies were anticipating being able to meet their future workforce needs, and we saw about 71% said that they did anticipate being able to meet workforce needs. But when you looked in the comments, it was a lot of yes, but if this, so some things, if we attract enough skilled talent, if we ensure that workers have adequate training, if we build up certain trades, electricians were mentioned quite a few times. So I think there was good recognition of the challenges there, but also hopeful in terms of being able to meet that growth. And of those that anticipated some workforce challenges, the most prominent reason was a lack of workforce with the necessary skills. So again, a focus on making sure that we're training and providing workers that can meet the needs. So I'll quickly just go through some of the strategies that we recommended through this report. I'll give a quick update on where we currently stand with this work, and then I'll be interested in hearing questions and conversation following. So the strategies fell within about 4 categories. This included implementation of policies that provide ongoing certainty for development, focusing on creating jobs that utilize and expand incentives, grants, and financing options. Again, this is really high level. There's more detail in the report. The second category, and a really key one, is workforce development and recruitment. Maine's 10-year economic strategy also recognized workforce as a key component to transitioning to a clean energy economy and growing Maine's economy overall. And we highlighted primarily supporting educational and training pathways, again, to make sure that Maine people can find new careers and meet the workforce needs, and also attracting talented and diverse workforce from out of state to Maine. Clean tech innovation is key as well. We must continue to support the innovation ecosystem and draw on resources that are existing and identify any gaps there may be. We also need to encourage the investment dollars that are already in the state go towards climate and clean energy focused products and services that can help the state meet our climate and clean energy goals. And broadband is a key component to this as well, both for business development overall, but also energy specific development, having internet access for, working on grid management, for example, and demand management is going to be key. So broadband's a very important component, something again that's being talked about quite a bit in the legislature this session and previous sessions. And then finally here we have, ensuring that all of these efforts ensure equity of job opportunities, affordable energy, public health benefits that are distributed across the state, making sure that these job opportunities are distributed across the state, and including just transition considerations for anyone that may face adverse impacts throughout this transition. So quickly here, I'll just give some updates. Since this report was released, we've obviously seen a change in administration at the federal level. And so, we're excited about the conversations that are happening there and trying to determine and prepare for where Maine fits in. When infrastructure and economic recovery is mentioned, it always tends to include a mention of clean energy and infrastructure and jobs. Energy Secretary Jennifer Granholm, in a confirmation hearing, I think it was actually in a tweet, said that she's obsessed with creating clean energy jobs. So I think there's a lot of good messaging coming from the federal level. We're also looking at what other states are doing and working closely with entities in Maine like MTI and Efficiency Maine to identify additional programming, and there will be more information coming on that soon. We are looking at soon launching a pilot program with NECEC stipulation funding and around providing internships and scholarships. So again, there'll be more information on that soon. That was mentioned in the governor's State of the Budget address. And we're exploring training opportunities. We're working closely with various educational and training entities in the state and highlighting that this is both an opportunity for the trades and vocational side, as well as more of the traditional four-year college route. There's opportunities for both in this transition. And then the last thing I'll highlight here is, we're working on some opportunities to support clean energy innovation. And one component of that was working closely with E2Tech on the Clean Tech Open. And there was an event a few weeks ago, Marty, now. I think there were 6 companies that ended up pitching.
We ended up having 8, and thank you for pointing that out because I failed to mention it in my introductory slide. So there's still time to apply to Clean Tech Open. We had 8 excellent companies give a quick pitch and get involved, and they all got a prize, which was a sea bag with a bottle of 1820 wines. But the real prize would be for them to apply and be accepted to Clean Tech Open.
Great, it's really exciting. So finding ways that we can continue to support that interest and growth is going to be key, and I'm grateful to have partnered with E2Tech on some of that work. So I know I ran a little long. There's a lot happening here. My contact information is on this next slide here if you'd like to reach out. The report is listed on that Maine Climate Council page, as well as the Climate Action Plan. So with that, I'm happy to take some questions and hear from those that are here today on any thoughts they have on clean energy workforce and innovation as well.
Yeah, that was really great, Melissa. So what we do now is we all get involved and chat and discuss. I have a favor to ask. Could you all pop on the screen? I want to do a smiling screenshot. So turn your camera on for a second. And I always turn off my self view because I don't like that. So I'll put that back on. So smiling screenshot. And this is a good way to get everybody kind of back in the room and engaged. But I thank you. Yeah, this is great. Look at all. Okay. So are we ready to smile? And 1, 2, 3, and here we go. Okay, that was great. Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. So Melissa, I will ask the most simple and basic question, and then there will be better ones. Where may we find the full report?
That's a good question. So you can find it on the Climate Council website. I'll also just post it quickly in the chat. It's on the Energy Office completed reports page as well.
Cool. Now we all know each other. We don't need this to be formal or anything. So please just jump right in with your questions. Oh, Lucas, thanks for putting that link in. Ted Gifford from RLC Engineering. I know you had a question about tracking metrics over time, but please jump in with questions, or I will pick on you.
This is Rick Smith. I'm concerned about the workforce development in the trades. You look at the offshore wind initiative alone and consider the number of what we loosely refer to as tradespeople who will be required to do the work to build out the offshore wind facilities that we hope to have. Just looking around the state informally, it doesn't look like we have anywhere near enough training facilities, and frankly, nowhere near the interest at the high school level in moving into that kind of training. I'm just curious whether there's anything that's being thought about to be done that would help the schools, the regular secondary schools, encourage more participation in this kind of training and work.
Yeah, it's a great question. So you'll see in the report and in conversations that we're also having and looking at some of these initiatives, efforts to engage in STEM, but with arts, career technical education centers, to kind of both garner the interest, as you mentioned, and also provide explanation to what the avenues are for employment, to help kind of generate that excitement and also introduce what those pathways are. I think ensuring that from there we have the next step of education or training that's needed, and that effort is tied closely to industries and understanding what specific workforce needs there will be are all important components. And just on the offshore wind specifically, this is not an area that we have others on the team that are much more engaged in it than I am, but the roadmap process that I mentioned will include a workforce kind of planning committee as part of that, and they'll be looking at some of these questions as well, specifically tied to offshore wind. So we'll be working closely with them on some of this overall clean energy workforce efforts, but I think it's a really good point and important, again, to make sure that as these opportunities arise, we have the adequately trained workforce to meet it. The last thing I'll note too is, in the 10-year economic plan and in this report, there's notes of making sure that we're also attracting workforce. And I think there's an opportunity there as well. Of course, we want to build up Maine's workforce and provide those job opportunities in state, but given the amount of workforce need there may be, I think there's opportunities also on the attraction side.
This is Ted Gifford, dealing with the solar industry explosion in the state of Maine. And there was a policy discussion around the installation of racking systems and solar panels being the structural components of a solar system, requiring electricians to install it. And the reason for that is that the racking system structure is the ground path for the electrical system. That would be synonymous to having electricians installing structural steel in a building, because it's also the grounding path for electrical systems as well. Is there any more discussion around this and the limitations on electricians in the state of Maine? It would seem that this policy discussion needs to not be employed, I guess.
Wow, does anybody want to all dive in on a literal third rail, Ted? So licensing consideration and that one I know I've heard all over the country, and it's a do you want to take a try at that, Melissa? Or what? I mean, there's the, I've worked with some new Mainers in pursuing becoming a master electrician. That is it's an industry association. Somebody help me out here. How are we thinking about this challenge? Maybe just to verbalize it is a step. I mean, and it comes up within industries, and I think members of the master electricians and people who hold that designation have a reason for wanting to maintain that situation. And then people in your shoes saying, is there I saw a great article recently about the dental therapists, right, which is a new designation within Maine. And is there some level of journey person electrician that could do those tie-ins? That's kind of what you're getting at, right, Ted?
Yeah, in essence, if the structural steel being pounded into the ground and the racking system being installed on top, it seems to me that I'd want to have structural people, laborers that can install that equipment properly from the viewpoint of the structure, not necessarily from the electrician side of things. And certainly if you could do that with laborers, then it would limit the amount of electricians that you need on site. And so therefore, we could solve part of our electrician labor shortage and get more systems installed.
Mm. Yep, no, good perspective and good to even get that queued up. Any
I'd like to follow up a little bit more with what Rick was talking about. I'm concerned about the, training and inspiring people to become competent as electricians, and figuring out how to ground the structure is certainly an important part of that. And I certainly agree with you, Ted, that we need to allow as many people as possible to do the things that they're good at. My particular focus at this moment is on SMCC and other two-year institutions, which I have come to admire substantially. I took a course there last year, a year before actually, and I was really impressed both with the quality of the instruction and the diversity of the students. Are we doing enough to help SMCC and the like in educating people beyond high school? Are we doing enough to support our vocational schools? I don't know if we have any. I don't know how many there are. I don't know where they are. Is that not an important foundation for developing the workforce? We really need electricians, and we're going to need a lot more because we will convert from fossil fuel to electrical energy. And, you know, that's just a whole big bundle of issues. But fundamentally, we need people who can put the wires together and bolt the things on the roof and fix the electric cars and so on and so on. So we need somebody to be focused directly on that issue. And who is that? Do we know, Melissa? Who in the state is particularly focused on post-secondary education and vocational education?
Yeah, this is a great conversation, some great questions. You know, I don't have specifics at this point, but we will have more information coming out soon related to this concern. There have been conversations with educational and training entities, including the community college system, on what specific industry needs there will be. And it's very clear that electricians is one of the key and most immediate ones that we're seeing. In terms of coordination with that, again, I will have some more information on it soon. I would say leading it for the energy office. The Governor's Office of Policy Innovation and the Future also has someone who's working specifically on workforce, and Maria Povek, if you're interested in connecting, sorry, I'm getting feedback, connecting with her, but she is also working specifically on some of these workforce and economic development efforts as well. And so we're working closely with that office. I would say that we hear these concerns, and I think that there are existing avenues that we can either build up or utilize to help meet the need. And yeah, I would just, yeah.
It sounds like a future E2Tech forum, and we hit on a theme here, maybe it connects. I mean, you know, back when I was a legislator, we spent a lot of time digging into this. And in another world in which I live as a nonprofit grant maker, we work on the nursing shortage really extensively, and you do see things starting, you know, finally to break loose there with focus on it. It's a great opportunity and a source of frustration all wrapped into one. for Maine's clean tech economy. And I'm embarrassed to admit I can't remember the right contact person myself, Eric. So we will find said person and put one of these events together. How about that?
Eric and Marty, both with respect to nursing that you just happened to mention, but with respect to the trades in general, at the high school level, there are places like the Region 10 school in Brunswick, which still has trouble attracting the level of interest it should, but they're a terrific organization and they're aimed at getting people into the trades. They know where to place them, both in 4-year and 2-year schools. The encouragement that I think they need, as I referred to earlier with respect to secondary schools generally, the places like the vocational schools are kind of seen as the poor stepsister, and the kids don't want to go because they don't think it's a place where they ought to be seen. And that's because of an attitude that's in our school system that needs to be worked on.
Did Nick Armentrout, you want to speak to that? I want to just very quickly say, speaking of Brunswick, we have a great member of the faculty there named Rick Wilson, who always comes to E2Tech events, is great about it, and is doing a career fair in May on this very thing. So we'll make sure to share that with you. But Nick, the high school level.
Yeah, I'm just echoing what was just shared. I believe that the incentive or the identifying the opportunity that there are good jobs, there are challenging jobs and skilled jobs available in this field needs to be shared prior to the great 2-year colleges or vocational programs. You need to get into the high schools. And I don't know if that's a job fair or sharing information with guidance or career counseling. But I think it's often an opportunity of young people just not knowing that there's that option out there, as well as it being in recent years sort of stigmatized as less than to pursue the trades. But absolutely there's a need, and I think waiting until folks entering the workforce are floating around asking questions, it's too late. You need to get into high school and light a fire for some folks.
Yeah, that's well said. Nick, by the way, does run Spring Creek Farm in Lyman and does agricultural grazing programs for solar installations. Rosanna, Woody, and then Rosanna.
Actually speaking as a master electrician, SMVTI class of 1982. SMVTI, my degree at SMVTI got me as much as my master's degree did, and in all honesty. But to answer back to the question as far as installations and stuff, it's the Electricians Examining Board that runs that whole program. And to become a master electrician is a little bit arduous. It's 8,000 hours combined education and experience. But there are and have been limited licenses that have been issued. You can get a limited license for residential wiring, things like that. It might be worthwhile to look into a limited license for, say, solar panel installation. And that may be a feeder to get people to start with that and then work towards a full master electrician license.
Yeah, that's a really great suggestion. And I know that actually ties into the heat pump world because obviously you need to run wiring to them. And I think Woody will probably reach through the Zoom and slap me across the head if I say that is simple, but it's maybe less complex than some of the installs that are out there. Is that fair, Woody?
No, that's a fair comparison.
Okay, yeah. Good. This is awesome. What a great discussion. Rosanna.
Hi. So York is launching our climate action plan. It's going to be broadly participatory, and the focus is going to be, now that the state has produced a climate plan, what needs to happen on the ground? And so I have 2 questions. Is there somebody who we can turn to for some guidance on optimizing our opportunities at the local level, working with whatever statewide programs or even regional programs there might be? So Melissa, maybe that's a question for you. but also Woody and anyone else who has expertise in this field, in this topic. Are you in a position to advise us? Could you be a guest at one of our working group meetings, for example, to inspire people? I'm looking for ways to actualize the strategies. This is going to be a very action plan oriented process.
Not sure about the whole inspire thing, but be more than happy to.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So your contact information is available through Marty, I hope.
Yes, absolutely. Yep. Woody is wonderful about it coming to our stuff. And he even got my earlier joke about that Woody Biomass was a member of E2Tech. I was aiming it at him. And I think Jessica Scott is with us too. And Rosanna, we have something in common. I'm a member of Biddeford's Climate Task Force, and I have invited Jessica from the GoPIF office to give us a presentation. She's presented, but it really has a great presentation that she gives. I see Bill Ferdinand has his hand up.
Hi, guys. Are you, I mean, I for funding all this stuff, I mean, we're not, it sounds like we're trying to get other resources outside the payment to solar providers. Are we just trying to get, you know, you had a policy to encourage clean energy, but the pricing of it is becoming more of an issue. And in general, the costs should go down over time so as that happens. I mean, it sounds like, you know, to get the training and other costs that we're talking about, you need other money. So where is it coming from?
Take that one, Melissa.
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I think it depends in part on which component of what I've presented here we're talking about. I think, you know, there are ways to utilize some existing resources and some existing funding that's available to, you know, either support programs that are existing or to pilot some opportunities for, you know, some of what we're talking about here and engaging more in high schools and working on CTE programs. So I think it's a good question. It's a big question. I think we're also looking at federal funding opportunities that may be coming that may be provided in terms of, you know, infrastructure or workforce. But I think it's going to be a mix of kind of what do we have currently, what can we do with the resources we have currently, what existing resources are out there to draw upon, and then, you know, depending on the specific program, I think funding is going to be something we need to continue to consider. But I don't think every strategy that has been proposed requires a large pool of financing for it.
So Bill, is
So
that
are
what
we?
Go ahead, Bill.
I was going to say, are we doing public-private partnership? We do this all the time, especially community colleges and CTE. Is that what you're thinking of? You know, where employers provide either in kind or other sorts of funding to help. You know, if the schools have the teachers and the students, the employers can provide the apprenticeship and the funding for other costs. Is that what you're thinking?
I think that's going to be one key component. Yeah, I think, and, you know, something that's highlighted in the report too is, you know, we need to have this coordinated engagement among the training and educational entities and the industry. I think both for the opportunity to utilize some resources that are there, but I think also to more clearly understand what the workforce needs are going to be so that we can align those. So I think, you know, one of the recommended strategies was to engage some sort of stakeholder process with those various entities to discuss some of these questions that you have. And I think but yes, I do think that what you laid out will be one component of what we're looking at.
Yeah, there are, the other thing to throw in Maine, and because of the pandemic, we're getting used to doing what we're doing right now. Having online resources can reach more people and fill in the blanks where you can't have in-person instruction. Some of this requires that, but for things that you can have combinations and reach more people. I know I work with a client that has done that for different industries across the country, and that's the same thing. They need to get more people, and they need to have an easy way for people to access the education.
Yeah, we did one of these on virtual reality a while back, and it was actually pretty cool. You could learn how to wire a heat pump with virtual reality. I want to pick on Tamara, who had a good question in the chat also. It also maybe Jason Rao, I think maybe had a question. Or Rosanna, is there something else that you wanted to dive into? Jason.
Sure, I was just going to make a comment. So I'm Central Maine Power's Energy Environment Regulatory Policy Manager, and for those of you who don't know me. But this discussion around partnerships with the community centers, I know that CMP has for some time had a partnership with KVCC to train line workers. And so, we have this public-private partnership there to help feed into, the need that the company has, for that type of work to support the T&D delivery infrastructure. So, I think there's examples out there where that exist today. Actually, I was up to KVCC years ago, and I remember going up on the roof of one of the academic buildings, and they have some solar. I thought they had a solar technician program there, so they had some solar hot water heaters on the roof and things to help train folks. So.
Yeah, does anyone know the up to the minute status of that? It ceased for a while due to, I'm not sure what, and I believe is coming back. Does anybody know the exact status of the solar installer training program at KVCC? We'll get that. It's been suggested that we reach out to that already at E2Tech, and I think that is a good program. As much as 10 years old and went through some kind of transition that I'm not 100% sure what that was about. It's much needed. We'll get Woody up there to teach a class. Peter, any questions or things that we should be diving into? Or Ruben? Oh, Peter?
Well, Melissa, I hear a lot about a big infrastructure bill coming out of the new administration. Does Maine send a position paper? How do we tell our congressional delegation what to do?
It's a really good question. I don't have a specific answer. There is engagement, I know, with the congressional delegation, but I don't have specifics on exactly what that engagement looks like. If you wanted to send me an email, I'd be happy to follow up with more information when I get a chance to. Director Burgess of the Energy Office and Director Pingree of the GoPIF office would be the ones that are more engaged in those types of conversations. So I did just post my email address in the chat if you'd like to follow up.
Right. I imagine that if it goes through, Maine will accrue a lot of money and be able to do a lot of things. But I just wondered whether we can direct it or suggest what we want.
Yeah, it's a good question. I do know that we are thinking quite a bit about the various programs and opportunities and what to do with funding if it comes our way, and trying to be as prepared as possible. Of course, we're not inside the administration and don't know exactly what that funding will be directed towards, but I think as much as we can prepare ahead of time and really create the programs that some of that money could go towards, then the better position we will be in, assuming that moves forward.
Thank you.
Ruben.
I'm a board member of the Maine Ocean School Foundation, and Maine Ocean School is one of the two magnet high schools in the state. The Ocean School is a new one. It's based in Searsport, but it is available to any student in Maine. And because of the pandemic the past year, it learned to work virtually overnight, as many organizations did and the like. And it's useful to report that the 21 students this past year really haven't missed any classes and are deep into everything. They are keenly interested in the preparation of the workforce for the offshore wind platforms, and they are keenly in the process of preparing students for skill qualification courses while they're still in high school and the like. So if you haven't given any thought to it, there's a workforce task force headed by Professor Melissa Langdon from University of Maine, who's got about 40 people from different companies and industries and the like. So there's Maine Ocean School is publicly funded. Unfortunately, I've been funded on a formula for charter schools for the last several years, and it's just finally gotten to the status that of the magnet school formula, which is what the school up at Limestone is doing. So we'd like to encourage everybody to make use of Maine Ocean School as a step in these processes. And naval engineering and all that sort of stuff is going on. So they've got skills. One of my entry points to this is small power production and alternative energy. I used to own a hydroelectric plant in Dover Foxcroft, and did a lot of work with cogeneration, and a lot of the engines used in small scale cogeneration are the same ones used on marine vessels. And so the skill sets are directly interchangeable, and I would encourage giving some thought on to how the magnet schools could fit into what we're doing.
Well said, Ruben. That's really, really interesting. We time for just one comment or a question from Tamara, and then I want to get to a real quick closing thing from Jason. Tamara, go ahead.
Okay, and I'll be quick. Yeah, I'm just, thank you for doing this. But my question is there a focus also on policy? I know it's energy conservation was huge piece of this clean energy policy, but on like non-car micro-mobility initiatives. And what I'm thinking is in the past, Maine had a comprehensive plan law when growth was out of control. Is there any initiatives to encourage the state planning office, grants for regional councils or for municipalities to work on, building those really good bike paths and the corridors for people who maybe don't own cars, so we could get a push in that direction.
Is Stevie Mahar working on that, Tamara?
No, I'm just a biker,
Oh.
and I'm a former regional planner. So I listen to this, and I'm coming at it from that angle for clean energy, and just seeing like there's a lot to be done. Plus, going to places like Seattle and Minneapolis, where I'm seeing a lot more efforts in those areas to, really focus on where people live and where they work, and where you can build in that electric car as a companion piece, both for equity and other reasons, that it's not that easy to suddenly sprout up really good bike paths. So this is more personal, Marty, but
I got it.
yeah.
Melissa?
Yeah, it's a really important point. I think it's probably a better question for the GoPIF team and those that were more closely involved in some of the other components of the climate action plan. I know the transportation group in particular talked quite a bit about kind of larger planning of cities and how to incorporate some of these, easier bike paths and walking paths. So I'd be happy to connect you to the GoPIF team if you'd like to hear more about kind of where those conversations landed and what they're thinking about moving forward.
Thank you.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much. So Jason, gives just a quick update on the number of plugs in the Make Ready program for electric vehicles chargers.
Sure, yeah. So yeah, speaking of transportation, so actually to Tamara's question, there's also the group Grow Smart Maine, which is looking at planning. So that's another entity to check out. So yeah, so CMP, we have this Make Ready pilot program where we're covering the costs, some of the costs for level 2 electric vehicle chargers. We have 60 plugs available in the program. We've had over 100 plugs apply. So we have had a fair amount of good interest, and I think we're at the point where we should have most of those 60 plugs actually accepted this spring. So hopefully most of those will actually go into the ground once construction season can get going. We've partnered with Revision Energy on this project, so we're working with them to to deploy these chargers. So
Cool. All the E2Tech members rowing the same direction. I love it. And they are all needing electricians. Melissa, round of applause. Thank you so much. A great presentation.
Thank you. And I would just say, please, everyone stay engaged. Send me emails if there's any follow-up questions, and there'll be more information on this coming soon. So thank you, Marty and E2Tech.
Of course. Thank you. And please come to our upcoming events. These are both very strong events, and there's more coming. Where that came from, and it's all based on your ideas and our participation. Enjoy the beautiful afternoon, or the Energy Committee, or wherever you're headed. Reach me at marty@e2tech.org. Keep those cards and letters coming. Thanks for being here, and we will see you on April 13th for our PFAS event, if not before. All right. Cheers.
Thanks, Marty.
Thank you. Bye.